Hello and welcome back to our series for creating a custom budget app in Salesforce. In the previous 4 videos, we did a whole lot of things around creating custom objects and fields, setting up our page layouts, building some flows to create all of the monthly records that we're going to need, and then we created a screen flow that lets us add our expenses. In this video, we're going to do a few cleanup steps, mainly adding a master detail relationship to one of the objects. And then we're going to upload some test data using the data import wizard. So I'll show you how to use that tool. And we're going to create some reports and dashboards using that test data. So the first thing we're going to do is create our master detail relationship on the budget month object. So we're going to go to our object manager, look for budget month, and click fields and relationships, and then click new. Now we want to create a master detail relationship, but chances are you've already been using this app for storing a lot of your expense data. And we don't want to necessarily completely get rid of everything. So I'm going to show you how to create a lookup relationship and convert that into a master detail. So, because if I tried to just create a master detail relationship on this object, it would say, oh, you've already got existing records, so all of those records need to have a parent, because a master detail does require that a parent exists. So the first thing we're going to do is create our lookup relationship. Click next. It's going to look up to the budget object. We'll just leave everything as is here. Hit next. Keep our field level security as is. Click next again. We will add this field to our budget month layout. And we will add our related list to the budget layout. All right, so now that we have our lookup relationship, we're going to go into our budget app. And we're going to just parent everything that we need to. So we're going to go to our budget month in the budget month tab. We're going to view all of the records. We're going to open this as a table. And in order for us to do this pretty quickly using the list view, we're just going to add the new field that we added to our list view, hit save. And then now, since we already had that main budget from our previous videos, we're just going to do that for all of the records. So we're going to say select all, and if you have a bunch of different budget months you've already been creating, then chances are you'll have to do this. We're going to update all 3 with that main budget, hit save. All right, so now that we have our lookups populated, we're going to go back into our object manager and into that budget month object. We're going to go to our fields and relationships. And for this budget field, we're going to click on it, edit it, and we're going to change the field type. You can see the 2 options we have are just lookup and master detail. So we're going to change that to our master detail relationship. Click next. Just leave everything as is. Next again. And save. All right, so now that we have our master detail created, we do need to make a few changes to our flows. So we're going to go into Home, type in Flow, go to our Flows page, and we're going to be editing 4 flows. The first one is the monthly budget month creator. So this monthly budget month creator that we created in our 3rd video, we're going to change how this works a little bit. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to change our object to say for budget. And it's going to run for every budget record. And now that we're running this for every single budget record, we want to change our create records for the next budget month to use a new field that we created, that budget field. And we're going to set that to the record variable, the global record variable. And that's just going to be the ID of the record that we're passing into the scheduled context. So one thing you'll see here is we're going to end up putting for our total monthly budget, instead of having that total available come from that get main budget, it's going to get it from the records total available. And there we go, hit done. And now we have no need for this one, so we're just going to delete this get records because we're not getting the main budget. Instead, we're running this for every single budget record. And the reason we're doing this is in case you have multiple budgets, it's going to run this flow for every single budget and create a budget month for the next month underneath that budget. Now we can save as. We'll leave everything as is and save and then activate. All right, so the next flow we're going to edit is the create category months flow. And in this flow, we're going to add a resource. It's going to be a variable called var budget ID. And we're going to make this one available for input. It's going to be a text field. It's available for input. And the place we're going to use this variable is the get records for our budget months. So this get next budget month, we're going to say it also needs to be a budget equaling that var budget ID. So you have this first day of month equals first day of next month, and the budget is the var budget ID. We'll do that for that next budget month when we're doing it in the first step, and we're also going to do it for getting the current one. So that budget field we created, and then using that var budget ID. And that's the only changes we're going to make to the create category months flow. So we're going to click save as, save it, and activate it. Awesome. Next, we're going to edit our create category month on category create flow. And this one, we're going to edit the subflow to accept that variable that we just passed in. So we made this var budget ID available for input on the subflow. So we're going to include it, and we're going to say the record category and that budget that it's related to. And you can just say this budget __ C because that is the ID of the budget that this category is related to. Because remember, this is running for the category that's passed in. We can save as and activate. And then the last flow we're going to edit is our monthly category month creator. We're going to do something very similar to what we just did the last one in our subflow. We're going to edit it and pass in that budget ID. Because remember, we're calling the same flow, that create category months flow, in both of the flows we just edited. So we just want to pass in the record and then the budget for that record. So the categories budget lookup ID. And activate that one. All right. Very good. So now that we've edited our flows and after making that change, we should be in good shape now to actually just delete the budgets that we currently have. Now, you don't have to delete the budgets that you currently have. I'm going to provide some test data for this in a Google Drive, and I'll provide a link for that in the description. But I just want to show you what happens when you delete a single budget. It'll delete all of the records underneath it. So I have my main budget here. And if I just delete this guy, what it'll do is, based on that schema, it'll delete all of the budget months, all of the category months, and all of the expenses that are underneath that budget. It'll also delete all of the categories too. And this is okay because I haven't started using it in this environment. I've used this app in my other environments. And keep in mind, you don't have to do this. You only necessarily need to do this if you want to visualize the reports and dashboards. The test data that we're going to be passing in with Data Import Wizard is going to appear a little more cleaner. Your data may not necessarily be as clean, which is fine, but it'll at least show you the things that you need to see. All right, so now I just need to create a single budget. And if you're following along with this and you're using the test data, you need to call this one test budget. The total available, I'm going to make it 5,000. Hit save. All right. And now we're going to go to the link that I'm going to leave in the description. So this link I'm going to put up in here, and this is a sharing link for Google Drive. And since this is my Google Drive, I can go ahead and download those. I do already have them downloaded, but I just wanted to show you that this is what it may look like. It may look a little different to you because this isn't your drive, but you should have all 4 of these files available to you. So now that I have these downloaded, I'm going to be using them with the data import wizard. All right, so the first thing we're going to be creating is our budget months. So let's go to our budget month tab, and you'll just click import, and this will take you into the data import wizard. The data import wizard is a free tool. It comes with Salesforce and allows you to upload data, but you can't necessarily do it for a lot of the other standard objects, but it does allow you to do it for any custom object, which is great for us since we're using entirely all custom objects. And since we launched it from there, it's not going to let us choose a different one. We're just going to use our budget months. We're going to opt to add new records. And very important that you say which budget field in your file specifies that master detail relationship, the one that we created. You want to say it's the budget name. So this budget months CSV, I'm going to drag this in. And if I click next, it'll give me some of those example records. So you can see the field for budget __ C dot name is that test budget. So that's what's doing the lookup to the master detail. So for this, I'm just going to put budget for the field. Then I'm going to map my first day of month. And I already have the name mapped, which is nice. And then the total monthly budget, I have a field for that as well. So I have all 4 of my fields here, and it shows me what the example data is that I'm going to have after that. So I'll go ahead and click next, and it'll have me here confirm that I have 4 mapped fields and I don't have any unmapped fields. If you want, you can hit previous to figure out mapping a little bit differently, but we know our mappings are good, so we're going to hit start import. All right, and then it says, congratulations, your import is started. And if we click OK, it'll take us into setup into the bulk data job loads page, and it'll show us the results of our record processing. So we see we have 6 records processed. So essentially underneath that test budget, we have 6 months of budget data we're uploading. So it did that 6 records successfully. And if we want to see what those records look like, we can go back into our budget app. And we're already on our budget months list view. So we can see there's the budgets for all of the months previous. So we have our budget month for June all the way through November. All right, the next one we're going to add is the categories. So we're going to go to our categories tab, click import. And then I'm going to say, yes, we do want to put our categories as the custom object. We want to add new records. Again, here, we want to say that the budget name is the one that specifies the master detail relationship, because if you remember from the first video in our schema, we created that lookup from category to budget using a master detail. And then one thing I just wanted to point out is that you can opt to trigger the workflow rules and processes. For us here, we're not going to be doing this, but let's say that you're doing this in a real world scenario and you do want your workflow rules, your flows, your process builders to trigger for any of those new or updated records, you can do that. But for us, luckily, we don't have to do that with the data import wizard. We can opt to not do it. And we're going to do that because we don't necessarily want all of those category months created automatically. We want to just upload them, which you'll see here in a minute. So the next file we're going to use is that categories.csv. So from the Google Drive, grab that category CSV and pull it right into there. Click next. And the 3 fields we're mapping is that budget master detail. So put budget here for the field. And for the default budget, we have our default budget field. And next. So we have 3 mapped fields. Let's click start import and OK. And so here you can see we have 15 categories that we've passed in, and they all processed fine. None of them failed. So let's go back into our budget app, we can view those categories in our list view. And there they are. Sort of just a general variety of categories that you might have. There may be more categories you'd have, but it's entirely up to you. You know, what categories you create, what you name them. This is just some test data for you to visualize the reports and dashboards. All right, the next object we're going to be putting in is the category months. So go to the category months tab, click import here. I'm going to choose that category months object, add new records. And you'll see here there are actually two fields that we want to map via lookups and master details. So our lookup is going to be that category name. So we're going to use the category name in our file to match with the category. And we're going to use the budget month name to match for that master detail. All right, and we're going to drag in our category months.csv. Click next. We're going to map our budgeted amount to budgeted amount. This budget month name, we're going to map that to our budget month master detail. And then the category is that category lookup. Click next and start import. Okay. When you're dealing with not very many records, it doesn't take that long for it to process. So here, even though there was 90 records, it didn't take any time at all. Processed very quick time, and all of my records succeeded. So that's awesome. Go back into our budget app. And then the last object we're going to be uploading records to is expenses. And one thing to keep in mind with this test data is I didn't really build it out a whole lot. There's a lot of categories where I maybe just put like a value for the entire month as a single expense record. Chances are you'll have a lot more expense records than I do. Just keep that in mind. It's just test data. All right, we want to add new records here, and we do have two lookups and master details we want to do. So we have category name for our category lookup and category month name for that master detail. We'll drag in the expenses.csv file. Click next. Amount __ C, we'll map that to our amount. Category month name is going to the category month master detail. Category is going to category. Description into description. Or if you wanted to, you can also do for name. If you decided you just want to use name for your expense description, you can do that. I know this was something I added in order to have more characters. And then expense date, it goes to expense date. Now we'll start our import. And you can see it processed 98 records. So against all of those category months, it has 98 expense records. All right. So now that we have all of our data, let's take kind of a look at it. So we have under all for our expenses, these are just going to show the expense numbers, but if you want to see them, you can edit your list view to have some more fields so you can see what the category is, what the amount is, what the expense date was, and the category month as well, I suppose. Oh, description as well. Yep. And save. So you can see here's all of the data that we uploaded. So they're all related to a specific category month, and they have a description. So a lot of these are just like, oh, trash bill for this day, gas bill for that day, all those kinds of things. But you can see like this one's just saying like entertainment, and that's just the single expense, for all of our entertainment budget for this month of October. All right, so now we're going to go back into setup. We're going to go to the quick find and look for report types. So you just start typing report, and you'll see report types right here. All right, and a custom report type is basically a way for you to visualize your data inside of reports using lookups. So in the case of accounts and opportunities, you would say, I want to see all accounts that have an opportunity. So we're going to click New Custom Report Type. Our primary object is going to be Budget Month, and the label is going to just be called Budget Months with Category Months. And what I usually do is just copy the label down into here. Sometimes if a report has a specific function, you'd put what that is in the description, but for our purposes, I'm just going to leave that as the label. And then I'm going to put this in other reports, and I'm going to deploy it right away. So we're going to have it available to us. And when I click next, you'll notice that you have the primary object already selected, which is our budget months object. And the related object we're going to use is category months. And we're going to say that every single A record must have at least one B record. So that's what I was talking about with the visualizing of data. So if you wanted to say some of these budget months might not actually have any records inside of category months, you could do that. But for our purposes, we know that all of our budget months are going to have category months underneath them, so we're going to include them in there. If the budget month that we're working with doesn't have any category months, we don't want to show that in our report. So click Save. And now that we've got our custom report type, we can go back into the UI, and we'll just want to refresh to get that one available to us. And now we're going to add to our budget app, and you can just edit your items right here for navigation. We'll choose reports and dashboards, and we'll add both of those just to the end. Hit save, and now we drop down all of our tabs. We have our reports and our dashboards tabs. All right, so the first report we're going to create is going to be our spent versus budgeted by category. So we're going to use that budget month with category months custom report type we created. Say start report. And you can see here we have a declarative editor for creating a report. First thing we want to do is filter to say all time. So now we're going to add some columns, and we're going to add a row grouping as well. The first thing is the row grouping, and that's going to be off of the category name. So we're going to say category name. And I'm going to go ahead and update the preview automatically so that it shows us after every edit we make what our data might look like. And this is just a preview, so it doesn't show all of the records, just shows a limited number of the records. And you can run the report to see the whole thing. So for our category, we're going to add some columns in here. We're just going to delete these ones. We're going to add in our spent amount for the category month object and our budgeted amount for the category month. Then we're going to add in our budget name, so just the budget name from the budget month. And you can see here we've got our categories, which are grouping those various category months underneath them. And we're going to add a summary formula. And what a summary formula does is it runs a calculation off of a row grouping. So in our case, we're going to actually use a very basic formula, and it's just going to be called the difference. And it's going to be a currency with 2 decimal places. And in our formula editor, we're going to use our fields over here to grab our budgeted amount and our spent amount. So we have the budgeted amount from category months, and we insert that, and we subtract the spent amount from category months. So for every single category, this is going to return the difference between the budgeted amount and the spent amount. So you can see the difference between this auto loan first car is $250. And if we hide the detail rows, you can see for all of these categories, this is what it looks like for the test data. So this doesn't show all of the data, but for any of the data that's coming in for the categories for auto loan first car, it's only showing that we've done $500 of budgeting and spent $250, so we have $250 remaining. So the difference for this is you want to have like a positive value here. If you have a positive value, then you're in the green. If you have a negative value, that means you're spending too much within that category. So now that we have that created, we are going to now add a chart. We also don't necessarily need to see the row counts. We're going to hide that. All right, and the chart we're going to create, if we go over here to chart properties, we're going to make this a column chart. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to visualize for each category how much I've spent versus how much I budgeted. And I want to see these side by side. So for auto loan, I want to see the bar of going up for budgeted versus the bar going up for spent. So I'm going to keep the y-axis on spent amount, and I'm going to add a measure here to measure that budgeted amount. So it looks like it added it for me automatically, which is nice. And you can see here that's just showing me the difference between those. If we run this report, it'll make a little more sense, and it'll look cleaner with all the data. One thing I do want to do here, and unfortunately this doesn't pass over when we use a dashboard, but if you're looking at this report, if you're just drilling into this report for a specific budget month, then you can see different colors. So for our spent amount, we're going to say that's red. And for the budget amount, we're going to keep that as blue. Make it a little bit lighter. There we go. All right. So now that we've got this, we're going to save and run. And I'm going to call this spent versus budgeted by category. It'll automatically populate a report unique name. And I want to save this just in public reports. And hit save. And since I hit save and run there, it's going to go ahead and run this report so we can see it for everything. Now you can see from the full set of data, we've budgeted $30,000 for those 6 months, and we've spent $25,000 of those. One thing to consider, though, is that we have November with not a lot of expense data. So if you want to see this in a better way, and actually looks like I forgot to do the first day of month for our category months, we want to use that for our date filter, and then we want to keep that at all time. And if I just change this, I can say I want to see just last month. Oops, passed it up. So I can say last month, apply, and then you can see it's pretty much the same for the most part, but it's saying, okay, look, I budgeted $5,000, so for October we spent $4,300 of that, which is great. It's a difference of $600. That's $600 saved, $617 saved. So now that I've got that, I want to switch this back to all time, and then we're going to click save to save this filter to use the first day of month. And we have a report. We're going to use this report in a dashboard shortly here, but before we do that, we're going to create ourselves another report. And this report is going to use that same type, the budget months with category months. And it's going to be a little bit more of a basic report. It's not going to have a chart with it. We're going to filter, and remember here, make sure you use the first day of month for category months and switch it to all time. And we're going to have ourselves a row grouping. For budget month name. So now you can see we're grouping by our budget months. And for our columns, we want to add our total budgeted and our total spent. And we don't necessarily need to say detail rows. We can leave that alone. And same thing with row counts. And we want to add that same summary formula that we created earlier. We're going to call that the difference. It's going to be currency output, 2 decimal places. And it's going to be the same thing. So it's going to be that budgeted amount versus the spent amount. So for this, I want to find our budgeted amount, but I want to use it for the budget month. So I say budget total budgeted, and then subtract the total spent from that budget month. And it's valid, and I click apply, Now you can see here's the difference. For July, it looks like we went over budget. July is, I guess, a kind of expensive month, so it makes sense that we would have a little negative there, but we're making up for it in these others. Obviously, for November, we haven't spent very much at all, and we budgeted quite a bit already. So we just want to omit that potentially from some of our reporting filters, which we can do at any time. And this is all we're going to do for this. So we're going to hit save and run, and this is going to be our budget month data report. We'll let it populate its own name, save it in public reports, and save. All right, so now we've got 2 reports, and we want to then create ourselves a dashboard. So we'll go to the Dashboards tab, click New Dashboard. We're going to call this our budget dashboard. We'll save it in just a new folder called Budget Dashboards. And create. Now we're going to start adding some components. So we have our spent versus budget by category report we'll use. We'll select it. And we just want to use the chart settings from the report. So we can show this directly on our dashboard. And that's all we have to do for that. So we just hit save. We're going to make this one quite a bit bigger. It's going to look something like that. And now we can visualize for all of these various categories. You can see what we've spent versus what we budgeted. Next, we're going to add a component using the budget month data report. And it's just going to be a metric. And it's going to measure the difference for all of our budget months. We're going to keep that displayed with the shortened number. And then for this, we're going to say for our ranges, 0 is red. So if we have a difference below 0, it's going to show in the red. If we have a difference between $0 and $100, it's going to show yellow. And if it's above $100, then we'll show green. And then the title for this is going to be called Profit or Loss. And we'll add a subtitle for this saying it's the difference of budgeted and spent. Looks like I put it there. Gotta love autofill. All right, and then click Add. And we're going to put this one right over here, make it a little bigger so we can see how much, based off of what we're looking at here, did we profit by or what did we lose. The next component is going to be our spent by category. And we're going to show this in a pie graph. So we'll use this spent versus budgeted by category. Pick this pie chart. And for this pie chart, we're going to use that value with the sum of spent amount. And we're going to slice it by the category so it knew everything that I wanted to do. We're going to leave this combine small groups into others unchecked. And then we don't necessarily need to sort by anything. We can keep all this as is. And I'm just going to call this one spent by category. So, because we're using that sum of spent amount, and we're looking at that across all of our categories. I'm going to make this one a little bit smaller so I can fit more over here. And then I'm going to make a very similar component to that one, but based off of what we budgeted. So now I can say a pie chart for this, and instead of the sum of the spent amount, I want to say the sum of the budgeted amount. Uncheck that. And for our title, we'll do this one, budgeted by category. Pull it up here, make it a little smaller, and there we go. The next one we're going to create is our spent versus budgeted by category report, and this one is going to be a lightning table, and this lightning table is going to have a row grouping of category, and we're going to measure our difference. We don't need to worry about the record count. We're just going to only look at the difference. And what we're trying to look at here is we're trying to see where we did the worst in terms of saving by category. So we're going to do this by sorting the difference, have that stay at ascending, and we're going to want to add conditional highlighting. And that conditional highlighting is going to have some splits from 20 to 50. And essentially anything under 20 is going to be red, anything in between 20 and 50 is yellow, and anything above 50 is green. So you can kind of see now what our difference is looking like. So because on our mortgage we just had 0, it's on red. Now that means we're not saving anything for that, but that's okay. We knew we weren't going to necessarily save anything for that, so no big deal. And we're going to call this worst savings categories. And then add it. I'm going to add it right next to here. Make it a little smaller. And now you can see we're doing pretty good here with a lot of these. If we were to save this and hit done, we can start scrolling. You can see for all of these categories, we're doing pretty good. So not too bad. We're saving money. This is all a happy path, I suppose. All right, and then the last one we're going to create is very similar to this worst savings categories component. It's going to use the spent versus budgeted by category. It's also going to be a lightning table. We're going to use the category name. And for this, we don't want to show record count. We just want to say difference. We want to sort it by the difference. And this time we want to do it descending. So we want to see what are our best categories that we're saving in. We'll add our conditional highlighting and put those same values, so 20 and 50. And now you can see these are now showing the ones that we're saving money the most in. And we'll call this one best savings category. All right. I'm going to resize this first, then I'm going to pull it up here. And there we go. All right, we'll go ahead and click Save. And the next thing we're going to do is create a filter. So let's say that we're looking at this budget and we only want to look at last month. We're going to add a filter, which is going to be that first day of month for our category months. And it's just going to be called first day of month. And the values are going to be relative. So we're going to add this month. We're going to add in a last month. We're going to add in last 3 months. And then last 6 months. So now we have 4 filter values that we can choose from, and it will change what we see on the dashboard based off of that filter. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that this filter does filter off of whatever you have set here in the filter here. So if I'm wanting to use like a different date field, I could potentially do that. But it's luckily all the date fields are good for all of these underlying reports. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit save and done. And now we'll see what does it look like for last month. So for last month, if you remember, we had that $617 that we saved. But you notice that here's our worst savings category. So it's showing us, yeah, we spent a lot in entertainment last month. But that's okay because we did pretty well on a lot of our other savings. So we did end up coming out in the green. All right. And so that concludes our reports and dashboards. In the next video, we're going to do some mobile app design, and we're going to show you how to, take this app on the go, add expenses really quickly and easily, and see at a glance what your budget's looking like. So hope you had a great time. We'll see you in the next video.